There are some stories a town tries to forget. This is one of them. Her name was Amara. 16 years old, quiet as morning light, and sharper than most people gave her credit for. She lived with her mother on the edge of town, in a small house that smelled of boiled rice and herbal medicine. Her mother, Mrs. Osei, had been sick for a long time, the kind of sick that creeps in slowly, takes the strength from your hands, and leaves worry in its place. Amara carried that worry every single day, tucked behind her smile, hidden beneath her careful eyes. At Ridgemont High, Amara was known for one thing, her scholarship. It was the only reason she could attend. Every grade, every test, every late-night study session, all of it was for that scholarship. Without it, there was no school. Without school, there was no future. She knew this better than anyone. So when the morning of the spring assembly arrived, Amara dressed carefully, checked her bag twice, and walked to school with hope sitting quiet in her chest. She did not know that by noon, that hope would be torn from her, in front of everyone. She did not know that by the end of that day, the whole school would call her something she was not. Something ugly. Something that sticks. They would call her a thief. The assembly hall was packed. Every student at Ridgemont High sat in long rows, fanning themselves in the warm air. The principal stood at the front, talking about the spring fundraiser, the money students had raised selling food and tickets all month. $500, collected and counted, meant to buy new books for the school library. Then Zara Cole stood up. Zara was the kind of girl who owned every room she walked into. Pretty, polished, and powerful, her father was on the school board, and everyone knew it. She raised her hand slowly, like she had rehearsed the moment 100 times. "Principal Mensah," she said, her voice carrying easily across the hall. "I need to report something important." The room went still. "The fundraiser money is missing," Zara said. Her eyes moved across the rows of students and landed on Amara. "And I think I know where it went." Amara's blood turned cold. Around her, heads turned. Eyes found her. She sat perfectly still, confused, her heart suddenly beating too fast. She had not touched any money. She had not been near any money. But Zara was already speaking again, and her voice was calm and sure, and people were listening. And the worst thing about a lie told with confidence in a crowded room is this: it sounds exactly like the truth. Zara said she had seen Amara near the fundraiser table after school, alone, when everyone else had gone. She said she had not said anything at first because she wanted to be sure. She said she had been watching. The principal's face was hard to read. He asked Amara to stand. Amara stood. Her knees felt loose, like the bolts holding them had come undone. She looked around the hall, at 500 students, and found no friendly face. Even her two closest friends, Bea and Toyin, looked uncomfortable. They did not look at her. "Amara," Principal Mensah said carefully, "do you have anything to say?" "I didn't take anything," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "We'll need to check your bag," he said. Not unkindly, but firmly. A teacher walked over. Amara's hands trembled as she placed her bag on the seat beside her. She was not afraid of what they would find, because there was nothing to find. She knew that. She was sure of that. The teacher reached inside. The hall was so quiet you could hear the rustle of the zipper. Then the teacher stepped back, and in his hand, wrapped in a rubber band, neat as a gift, was a roll of notes. The fundraiser money. Amara stared at it. She had never seen it before in her life. The sound that moved through that assembly hall was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was the sound of 500 people breathing in at once. That soft, collective gasp that means something terrible has just become real. Amara could not speak. The money sat in the teacher's hand like an accusation with weight and color, and everyone was staring at it, then at her, then back again. Principal Mensah looked pained. "Amara, come with me, please." She walked out of the hall on legs that did not feel like her own. Behind her, the whispers started, slow at first, then quick, then everywhere like fire finding dry grass. She heard her name. She heard the word stolen. She heard someone laugh. In the corridor outside, she turned to look back through the small window in the door. She found Bea's face in the crowd. Bea, who had known her since primary school. Bea, who had eaten at her mother's table and borrowed her textbooks and cried at her shoulder. Bea looked away. Just like that. No hesitation. Just away. Amara turned back and walked forward, because there was nothing else to do. Principal Mensah spoke softly about procedure and investigation, and giving everyone a fair chance. She heard the words, but could not hold them. All she could think was this: the money was in her bag. And she had no idea how it got there. That night, she was suspended pending investigation. "Listen," There is a particular kind of pain that comes not from a wound, but from watching people decide who you are. Amara knew that pain now. The next morning, even though she was suspended, her mother did not know. Amara could not tell her. Mrs. Osei's heart was fragile these days. The doctor had said so plainly. Stress was dangerous for her. So Amara dressed, said goodbye, and left the house as though going to school. She sat in the park for 3 hours, watching pigeons, feeling the cold air on her face. When she finally walked home a different way, she passed 2 girls from her class. They saw her. They did not speak. One of them took out her phone. That evening, a video went around. Someone had recorded the moment in the assembly, the teacher's hand pulling out the money, Amara's frozen face. Someone had added a caption, "Caught." Within 2 hours, it had been shared across every student group. By nighttime, strangers from other schools were watching it. Comments called her a disgrace, a fraud. Some said she had been stealing for years. None of it was true. None of it was even questioned. Amara sat in her room and watched the number of views climb like a fever. Then a letter arrived by courier, stiff, white, official. Her scholarship was under review. If found guilty of misconduct, it would be revoked. She held the letter with both hands and did not cry. Not yet. Going back to school after a suspension, even a temporary one, is a strange and heavy thing. The corridors feel narrower. The looks feel longer. Amara returned on the 4th day, walking through the front gate with her chin up because her mother had always said, "Carry yourself well, even when carrying is hard." But the school had already decided. She was removed quietly from the debate team. Her name was taken off the science fair registration. 3 teachers who once smiled at her now found things to do with their eyes when she passed. The academic support group she had joined, the one tied to her scholarship program, had a sign on the door, "Membership under review." Zara moved through the school like a queen who had just won a war. She did not need to say anything more. The damage was done, and it was spreading on its own. At lunch, Amara sat alone at the end of a long table. She unwrapped her sandwich, chewed slowly, and tried to look like someone who was fine. Then Zara stopped beside the table. She did not sit. She simply stood there, with 2 of her friends just behind her, and looked at Amara with something that was not quite a smile and not quite a warning, but something in between. "It's better if people don't sit with her," Zara said to no one in particular. "You don't want the wrong kind of attention." She walked away. 3 students who had been about to sit down changed direction. Amara ate her lunch alone. She tried to explain herself. That is the thing people do not talk about. How, even when you know the truth, you still try. You still believe that someone somewhere will listen. Amara went to Mr. Atta, her English teacher. He had always been kind to her, had written her a recommendation letter once, had told her she had real talent. She told him everything. The bag she had packed herself that morning. The assembly she had not been afraid of until she was. The money she had never seen before it appeared in her bag like a curse. Mr. Atta listened. He nodded. He was quiet for a long time after she finished. Then he said gently, "Amara, I believe that you believe what you're saying." She felt the ground shift. "But it doesn't look good," he said. "The evidence is what it is. I'm not in a position to take sides." "I'm not asking you to take sides," she said. "I'm asking you to help me find the truth." He sighed the way adults sigh when they have decided to do nothing. "Let the investigation run its course," he said. "These things have a process." She left his office knowing something new. The adults would not save her. They were waiting for the process, for the procedure, for someone else to act first. She was 16 years old and on her own. The truth was in her corner, but truth, she was learning, needs a voice to make it loud. The cafeteria was the worst place. It was the arena where Ridgemont's social order was most visible. Who sat where, who sat with whom, who sat alone. Amara sat alone. On a Tuesday, a group of boys from the year above spotted her and started quietly, cruelly mocking her from across the room. They used her name like a punchline. Other students at nearby tables looked, some laughed softly, most simply turned back to their own food. Silence is its own kind of cruelty. Toyin, her second close friend, the one she had thought might hold on, walked into the cafeteria, saw Amara, hesitated. For one moment, Amara's heart lifted. "Come sit with me," she thought. "Please. Just sit with me." Toyin looked at the boys, looked at the students watching, looked at Amara. Then she walked to another table, to people she did not know well, and sat with her back to the room. Amara stood up. She picked up her tray carefully, placed it at the return counter, and walked out of the cafeteria. She made it to the far side of the building, behind the old gym where no one usually went, before she let herself feel it, the loneliness, the unfairness. The terrifying sense of being accused of something and having no way to make anyone unsee it. She stood against the cool brick wall and pressed her eyes shut. She did not hear the footsteps until they were close. "You dropped this." She opened her eyes. A boy was standing a few feet away, holding out a notebook. He was the kind of person you pass every day and do not see. Medium height, quiet clothes, a face that was not remarkable unless you looked carefully. His name, she would learn later, was Daniel. She took the notebook. Her hands were still trembling slightly. "Thank you," she said, and meant to say nothing more. But Daniel did not leave. He stood there, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, as though deciding something. Then he said, quietly, "I was in the assembly hall early that day, setting up chairs. I saw something." Amara looked at him properly for the first time. "What do you mean you saw something?" He opened his mouth. Then someone called his name from around the corner, a sharp, short shout. Daniel looked over his shoulder. His expression changed, became careful, became closed. "I have to go," he said. "Wait," Amara stepped forward. "What did you see?" "Please." But he was already moving, hands in his pockets, head down, back into the school building. She watched him go, heart beating fast for a different reason now. Not fear, not grief, not humiliation. Hope. Small and fragile as a new flame in wind, but real. She held her notebook tight and stood in the cool shadow of the old gym, thinking. That evening, her mother's cough was worse. Mrs. Osei lay on the sitting room couch with a damp cloth on her forehead, and Amara sat beside her, counting what was left in the small money tin they kept on the kitchen shelf. The medical bills from last month were still unpaid. The prescription her mother needed cost more than they had. Amara did not sleep that night. She sat at the small table in her room and looked at the numbers and then looked away. $500. That was how much the fundraiser had raised. That was how much had gone missing. And it was also, almost exactly, how much Amara needed for her mother's treatment. She had not thought about that before. Now, sitting in the quiet dark, she understood for the first time how perfectly the story fit together, if you were looking from the outside. A girl with a sick mother. A girl who needed money. A girl found with the exact amount. The story told itself. It told it well. She put her head in her hands. In the morning, two things happened. New rumors arrived at school, not just that she had stolen this money, but that she had been doing it for years, quietly, from school events and collections. And an anonymous message appeared on her phone. Plain text, no name attached. "Leave this school. You don't want more trouble than you already have." Someone was not done with her yet. Fear changes the way you walk. Amara noticed this about herself. She had begun moving through the school differently, closer to walls, quicker through corridors, always checking who was watching. She had become smaller, quieter, always alert. But something had also changed inside her. Alongside the fear, something else had taken root. Anger. Clean, focused, quiet anger. The kind that does not shout but does not quit. She looked for Daniel. It took 2 days to find him. He existed in the school's forgotten corners, the library annex, the maintenance corridor behind the science block, the far end of the upper field where the grass grew long and nobody sat. She found him there, reading, eating a plain sandwich. He looked up when she sat across from him. He did not seem surprised. "You said you saw something," Amara said. No greeting, no preamble. Daniel was quiet for a long time. A bird moved through the grass nearby. The wind pushed the long blades sideways. "I saw someone near your bag," he said finally. "Before the assembly. Your bag was on the table at the side. You'd come in early, you put it down. Someone came up to it when they thought no one was looking." Amara's heart was very still. "Who?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "I can't say it out loud. Not publicly. Not yet." He looked at her with something complicated in his eyes. "But I'm not the only one who might know. There's a camera near that entrance. Old one. Might still work." He stood and walked away before she could say another word. She went to the school office and asked, politely and carefully, about the camera near the east entrance of the assembly hall. The secretary looked up from her desk, blinked, and said she would need to speak to the vice principal. The vice principal was a small, careful man who always looked like he was about to say something, and then decided not to. His name was Mr. Frimpong, and he listened to Amara's request with his hands folded neatly on his desk. "The fundraiser morning," she said. "There's a camera near the east entrance. I'd like to know if there's footage from that day." Mr. Frimpong was quiet for a moment. "Those cameras are monitored centrally," he said. "I understand. I'm just asking if the footage exists." Another pause. He'll need to check with the technical team. She waited 2 days. Then Mr. Frimpong called her back in. Unfortunately, he said, looking not quite at her, the system logs show the East Wing cameras were not functioning on that particular morning. Maintenance issue. Amara sat very still. Not functioning, she repeated. That's correct. She looked at him. He looked at his desk. Thank you, she said, and stood and left. Outside in the corridor, she leaned against the wall and thought carefully about what she had just heard. The cameras had stopped working on exactly the right morning. Not the day before. Not the day after. That morning. Someone had planned this very thoroughly. There is a moment in every hard story when the person carrying it almost puts it down. Amara reached that moment on a gray Thursday behind the school building, where she had gone because she could not bear the cafeteria, and could not bear the corridors, and could not bear one more look from one more person who had already decided what she was. She sat on the cold ground with her back against the wall, and let herself fall apart for exactly 10 minutes. She cried without making noise, the way you learn to cry when home has thin walls and a sick mother. She thought about transferring. She thought about the other school across town, smaller, quieter, no scholarship, but also no Zara Cole, no poisoned whispers, no anonymous messages on her phone. She could go. She could simply go. Then her phone buzzed. It was a message. No name saved. The number was unfamiliar. She almost ignored it. Her thumb hovered over the screen. He was already there when she arrived, sitting on the grass with his school bag between his knees. He looked more nervous than she had seen him, kept glancing toward the path, watching for anyone coming. "I'm not supposed to have this," he said, and reached into his bag. He pulled out his phone and turned the screen to face her. On it was a video, shaky, shot from a distance, poor quality but visible. He had been recording something else that morning, the chairs, he said, checking the arrangement, and had accidentally caught the east entrance in the corner of the frame. Amara watched. The timestamp read 7:44 a.m. The assembly had started at 8:15. In the grainy footage, Amara's bag was visible on a side table near the entrance. She had arrived early to help set up chairs. The hall was mostly empty. At 7:49, a figure moved into frame. Quick, deliberate. Aware of the hall cameras, but not of Daniel's phone. They leaned over Amara's bag, did something with their hands, and moved away in less than 15 seconds. The face was not visible, but on the figure's left wrist, clear even in the poor light, was a bracelet. Twisted gold wire, 3 small blue beads. Distinctive. Specific. Amara had seen that bracelet before. "Do you know whose that is?" Daniel asked, watching her carefully. She did. Her chest felt tight. "Yes," she said quietly. "I know exactly whose that is." The question now was what to do next. Then she opened it. One sentence. "I have something you need to see." She stared at the message for a long time. The wind moved around the corner of the building, and the air smelled of coming rain. She typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots pulsed. Then Daniel. She exhaled. Then she typed, "When?" His answer came immediately, after school. Same spot. She put the phone in her pocket, pressed her back against the wall, and took 3 long, slow breaths. She was not done yet. Not yet. The bracelet belonged to a girl named Priya. She was part of Zara's inner circle, always at her right shoulder in photographs, always present when Zara held court in the corridor. Not the loudest of the group, not the most visible, but always there. Amara began to notice things she had not paid attention to before. The way Priya moved through the school now, head down, separate from Zara's group in a way that had not been true before. The way she ate lunch alone at a small table near the window. The way she flinched when someone came up behind her unexpectedly. Something had shifted. Amara also noticed that Priya had been absent for 2 full days that week. No one mentioned it. Teachers took attendance and moved on. But Amara counted the empty chair. On the 3rd day, Priya returned. She sat in her usual place in mathematics, and Amara watched her from across the room. Priya's hands were clasped tight on the desk. She did not raise them once during the lesson. After class, Amara followed her carefully. Priya was quick through the corridor, head down. She pushed into the bathroom, and Amara waited outside. When she came out and found Amara standing there, she stopped completely. Her face went pale. "I just want to talk," Amara said quietly. "I can't," Priya said. Her voice was thin. "You were there," Amara said. "I have a video." Priya's eyes filled. She shook her head once, twice. Then she walked fast in the other direction, almost running. Someone had already warned her. She needed to understand who she was truly dealing with. So Amara went to the library, not to study but to search. She searched the school board records that were available online. She searched local news archives. She pulled on every thread connected to Zara Cole's family name. What she found made her sit back in her chair and stare at the ceiling for a long time. Zara's father, Mr. Elias Cole, had been on the Ridgemont School Board for 11 years. In that time, 3 students had been quietly expelled for various misconduct claims, each one a scholarship student, each one a student who had, at some point, competed with Zara or attracted the kind of attention Mr. Cole wanted for his daughter. The cases were not connected in the records, but they connected in Amara's mind, like dots that had always been waiting for someone to draw the line. This was not a schoolgirl prank. This was not jealousy acted on carelessly. This had been done before by people who knew how to do it cleanly, who knew which cameras to disable and which adults to rely on to ask no difficult questions. Amara looked at the list of names, 3 students before her, now her. She thought of the scholarship. She thought of her mother on the couch with the cloth on her forehead. She thought of Daniel's shaky video and the blue beaded bracelet. Then she thought, this ends with me. I am going to be the one who makes it stop. The question was how. A letter arrived from the scholarship committee. It was brief and formal and devastating. Due to the ongoing investigation and the nature of the misconduct allegation, her scholarship was officially revoked with immediate effect. She had 14 days to settle any outstanding school fees or arrange alternative enrollment. 14 days. Amara read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her school bag. She did not tell her mother. There was no version of that conversation that ended without causing harm. At school, she went to find Daniel. She found him in the library annex, and this time she did not waste words. She told him what she had found, the 3 previous students, the school board connection, the pattern. She told him about Priya, about the way fear had closed her face when confronted. Daniel listened. When she finished, he was quiet. You're planning something, he said. I'm planning to fight, she said. Without full proof? With what I have. The video. The pattern. And Priya. She looked at him steadily. But I need you. I need you to be willing to say publicly what you saw. He was quiet for a long time. Outside the library window, students crossed the yard in the thin afternoon light. Normal life, continuing without them. If I do this, he said slowly, I need to know you won't run if it gets worse before it gets better. It's already as bad as it can get, she said. He thought about it. Then quietly, all right. 14 days. It was enough. It had to be. She spent 4 days preparing. She wrote everything down, the timeline, the footage description, the library research, the names. She made 2 copies and kept them separate. She did not show anyone, not yet. She read the pages over and over until she knew them the way, a map of a place you need to escape. She also went back to Priya. Not at school. She waited near the bus stop 2 streets away, where Priya passed every afternoon at the same time. When Priya saw her, she almost turned back. But Amara said nothing threatening. She just said, sit with me for 5 minutes. Please. They sat on the low wall at the edge of the park. Amara did not accuse. She just talked. She told Priya about her mother. She described the medical bills and the scholarship letter. She talked about the 3 students before her, names Priya seemed to recognize from somewhere, some old conversation she had not thought about in years. She said, I know you were forced. I know you were scared. I'm not asking you to be brave for me. I'm asking you to be brave for yourself. And for the next girl after me. Priya sat with her knees pressed together and her hands folded in her lap. She stared at the park. She told me nothing would happen to me if I stayed quiet, Priya said finally. Very small voice. She's been telling people that for years, Amara said, and it has always been a lie. Priya did not agree. Not that day. But she did not say no. That was enough for now. On the 9th day of 14, Amara made her decision. She had spent the previous evening thinking about fear. About how it works, how it keeps you in place, how it masquerades as wisdom and calls itself caution. She had been afraid for weeks. She understood now that she could be afraid and still act, that those 2 things did not cancel each other out. She went to the school secretary the next morning and requested to be placed on the agenda for the following week's General Assembly. The secretary looked at her strangely. Students did not usually request this, but the request was politely and correctly made, and there was a process for it, and eventually, with some confusion, it was approved. She told Daniel that evening. The whole school, he said. Yes. And if Priya doesn't come through? Then I stand up there with the video and the research, and I tell the truth as far as I know it, and I let people draw their own conclusions. They might not believe you. Some will, she said. And those people will ask questions. And questions are what she's been trying to prevent this whole time. Daniel nodded. He was quiet for a while. Then, "They'll be there." She thanked him. She went home and sat with her mother, and helped her with her evening medicine, and watched a program on television they both liked. Her mother laughed twice. Amara held on to the sound of it. Tomorrow she would begin to fight. Tonight she was just a daughter, sitting with her mother, trying to hold on to what was good. The assembly hall was exactly as full as it had been on that first terrible morning. The same rows of seats. The same warm air. The same 500 faces. Amara stood at the front and looked at them all. She had not slept well. Her hands were cold. In the third row, she could see Zara Cole sitting very straight, arms crossed, wearing an expression that said she was not worried. Beside her, Priya sat with her eyes on the floor. Principal Mensah introduced Amara briefly. A student request, he had said, and addressed to the school. He did not know what was coming. He stepped back. Amara said, "My name is Amara Ose. 3 weeks ago, in this room, I was accused of stealing. Today I am going to tell you what actually happened." The hall shifted. She heard the murmur move through the rows. She spoke clearly from the beginning. She talked about the bag, the morning, the assembly. She talked about the investigation that had produced no real answers. She talked about the cameras that had mysteriously failed. She kept her voice even. She had practiced. Some students leaned forward. Some crossed their arms, already disbelieving. From the back rows, someone laughed, a short, mocking sound. Amara did not pause. Then she held up her phone and said, "I want to show you something. A video. Taken on the morning of the assembly." She pressed play. The hall went quiet. The video played on the screen the AV student had connected at her request. Daniel had sent her the clearest version he could edit together the night before. It was not perfect. It was grainy, it was short, and the face was not visible. But the figure was visible. The bag was visible. The act of reaching in was visible. The timestamp was visible. And the bracelet was visible. Students leaned forward. The murmur that moved through the hall this time was different, lower, more uncertain. The laughing had stopped. Someone in the front rows said something to the person beside them. An argument broke out in a whisper. Principal Mensah had stood up from his seat. His expression was no longer calm. Then something happened that Amara had not planned. Daniel stood up. He was in the middle rows, unassuming, unremarkable. The kind of person everyone slides past. He stood and he said, in a voice that carried further than you would expect, "I was there that morning. I filmed that video. I saw it happen." The room cracked open. Around him, students stared. Several turned to look toward the front, toward Zara, whose calm had finally slipped. She was looking at Daniel with something sharp and frightened in her eyes. Beside her, Priya had lifted her head. Zara opened her mouth, and Amara knew she was going to say something to manage it, to spin it, to find the words that put things back the way they had been. Zara was very good at that. But before she could speak, Priya stood up. The room went completely still. Priya was small, and standing made her look smaller. She was shaking. Anyone close could see it. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper, but the hall had gone so quiet that it reached every corner. "I put the money in her bag," Priya said. A sound like wind through a tunnel moved through the assembly hall. It was not quite a gasp and not quite a shout. It was the sound of 500 people recalibrating. "I was told to," Priya continued. Her voice steadied slightly with each word, the way a person steadies when there is nothing left to lose. "I was told if I didn't, something worse would happen to me. I was afraid. I've been afraid for 3 weeks. She stopped. "I'm sorry, Amara. I'm so sorry." She sat down. She was crying, but quietly. Amara looked at her. She felt no triumph, only a complicated ache, for Priya, for herself, for the weeks that had been swallowed by this. Around the room, heads turned. Eyes found Zara. Zara did not stand. She sat perfectly still, and her face was a mask that had begun to crack at the edges. 2 of her friends quietly moved their chairs sideways, the physical language of distance. You could see them choosing, in real time, which side of history they preferred to stand on. Principal Mensah came to the front. "This assembly is paused," he said firmly. "Zara, Priya, Amara, my office. Now." But the story was already out. You cannot unring a bell. What came out in the days that followed was not quick or clean. Truth rarely is. Priya told everything to Principal Mensah, to the investigating committee, and eventually to the district education board. She described the morning precisely, the plan, the instructions, the threat. She described 3 previous times she had been aware of similar things happening to other students. She named what she knew and admitted what she did not. The investigation expanded quickly. A journalist from a local paper who covered education policy picked up the story, not the school drama, but the pattern. The 3 previous students. The school board connection. The timeline of Mr. Elias Cole's influence over disciplinary decisions. The district board requested an urgent review. External investigators came in. The cameras in the East Wing were found to have been manually disabled. Not a system fault, as the school had claimed, but a deliberate action taken the morning of the assembly. The logs showed someone with administrative access had done it. Mr. Frimpong, the vice principal, was placed on administrative leave while the review was conducted. Zara Cole said very little. Her father hired a lawyer immediately. The school board suspended Mr. Cole from his position pending investigation. The lawyer released a careful statement that admitted nothing directly, but said all the right words about accountability. It was not a clean ending. The world had no interest in clean endings. But something large and hidden had been dragged into the light. The structure that had kept it safe was shaking. And Amara stood in the middle of it, still standing. 2 weeks after the assembly, the scholarship committee sent another letter. Amara held it for a long moment before she opened it. She sat at the kitchen table. The morning light came through the window and lay in a long bar across the floor. Her mother was sleeping. The house was quiet. She opened the letter. The revocation had been reversed. Her scholarship was reinstated, effective immediately. The committee wrote that the original decision had been made under circumstances that were now under formal review, and that they wished to acknowledge the disruption to her education. Amara put the letter down and looked at the light on the floor for a while. There was more. A local community fund, moved by the story in the newspaper, had quietly sent a contribution toward her mother's medical costs. It was not a solution. Medical bills are rarely solved so simply, but it was help, real and immediate, from people she had never met. She went to her mother's room. Mrs. Osei was awake, sitting up slowly, reading something. She looked at Amara with the careful attention of a mother who has known her child a long time. "Good news?" she said. Amara sat on the edge of the bed and gave her mother the letter. She watched her read it, watched the tight lines around her mother's eyes slowly ease, watched her hands, which trembled slightly these days, press the letter flat on the blanket as though making sure it was real. "Good news," Amara said. Her mother held out her arms. Amara leaned in. "Now, listen. Before this story ends, there is something the old ones always say. The hallway you were shamed in is the hallway you walk back through. Not to erase what happened there, but to prove that it did not finish you." Amara walked back through the corridors of Ridgemont High on a Monday morning. The same fluorescent lights. The same smell of chalk and floor polish. The same rows of lockers with their metal hinges. Nothing had changed about the building. But something had changed about her. And something had changed about the people she passed. Some looked away, out of guilt, out of shame, out of the ordinary difficulty of facing someone you let down. She did not need them to look at her. She did not need an audience. She walked for herself. But some looked at her directly, nodded. One girl she barely knew said quietly, "I'm glad you stayed." Daniel raised his hand in a small wave from across the yard. Even Priya, sitting alone on a bench near the library, their eyes met. Amara gave a single nod. Priya gave one back. No grand gesture. No speech. No fanfare. Just the ordinary, extraordinary act of continuing. She was still a girl with a sick mother and not enough money, and a long road ahead. The world had not become simple or fair. The people who had harmed her were not all punished. Life does not work so neatly. But this is what she had learned, and this is what the elder who tells this story passes on to you now. Silence lets injustice live. But one voice, honest, stubborn, afraid and speaking anyway, can be enough to begin the end of it.